under the boardwalk. Remember?
She shared the screen with Clint Eastwood in some of his most iconic films. For years, Sondra Locke was Hollywood's quiet force, graceful, sharp, and unforgettable. But after the cameras stopped rolling, she disappeared. And when she died, no one seemed to notice, not even Eastwood himself. Why was her death kept secret for weeks? And what truths did she take with her into the silence? Born in 1944 in Tennessee, Sondra Locke never knew her father. Her childhood was one of instability, raised by her mother and stepfather in a modest home. But she stood out, bright, ambitious, determined. At 16, she worked at a radio station while still excelling in school. She was popular, smart, and full of dreams. She formed a bond with a boy named Gordon Anderson, a relationship that defied labels. He would later become her legal husband, though theirs was a union of companionship, not romance. In a world that didn't make space for her, she built her own. Sondra burst into Hollywood with The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, 1968, earning an Oscar nomination for her very first role. Her performance was tender, intelligent, unforgettable. But her destiny became intertwined with Clint Eastwood. They co-starred in 6 films, including The Outlaw Josie Wales and Sudden Impact. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, and off-screen, they lived as a couple for over a decade. Still, her career suffered. Eastwood reportedly blocked her from taking roles outside his projects. When she turned to directing, she delivered films like Rat Boy and Impulse, both praised, yet quietly buried. Sondra wasn't just a sidekick. She was an artist trapped in someone else's spotlight. Though legally married to Gordon Anderson, Sondra's heart belonged to Eastwood, a man whose love was complicated, possessive, and ultimately devastating. Behind the facade of a Hollywood power couple, she endured emotional control, forced abortions, and isolation from the industry. In 1989, Eastwood ended their relationship by changing the Lockes to their home while she was away. The breakup wasn't just personal, it was professional ruin. Locke sued him for palimony and later for fraud after a sham directing deal meant to keep her quiet. These legal battles made headlines, not only for the betrayal, but for what they exposed about gender dynamics in Hollywood. Sondra became a symbol, not of victimhood, but of resistance. She lost love, but she reclaimed her voice, loud enough for the whole industry to hear. When Sondra Locke passed away on November 3, 2018, the world heard nothing. Not a headline, not a tweet, not a tribute from the man with whom she'd shared 13 years of life and love. For 6 full weeks, her death remained a secret, unannounced, unacknowledged. And when it finally came to light, the public was stunned. How could a woman who once lit up the silver screen vanish so quietly, so completely? She died of cardiac arrest related to breast and bone cancer, alone in her Los Angeles home. But it wasn't just the absence of family or friends at her side that made her death so mysterious. It was the complete erasure of her presence. No public funeral, no memorial, no statements from Hollywood colleagues. Clint Eastwood, once the love of her life and the source of both her greatest triumphs and deepest wounds, said nothing. Even the timing raised eyebrows. Her death was revealed the same week Eastwood released a new film. Was it simply coincidence or something more? For someone whose life had been dictated and reshaped by others, some speculated that the secrecy was intentional, her final, quiet protest, a way to reclaim her ending on her terms. What we do know is that she left no public farewell, no closing message. Her journals, letters, and personal artifacts were entrusted solely to Gordon Anderson, the man she married in name, but who stood by her in spirit for decades. He remained her most trusted confidant until the end. Whatever her final wishes, he was the only one who knew them fully, and he kept them guarded. In life, Sondra Locke was silenced, overshadowed, and too often forgotten. But in death, she orchestrated a vanishing act so complete it forced people to notice. She didn't disappear in scandal or spectacle. She chose solitude. She left the stage with no curtain call, and perhaps that was her final statement, a refusal to let anyone else script her goodbye. She had spent a lifetime being muted. In the end, she chose silence, and maybe that was the loudest message of all. She left her entire estate to Gordon Anderson, her lifelong companion, her legal husband, and the only person who never tried to rewrite her story. Estimated at nearly $20 million, her fortune reflected not just earnings, but the quiet settlements and royalties that followed years of litigation with Eastwood and the studios. She lived modestly toward the end, in a small home in Los Angeles, far from the glare of paparazzi. But her legal legacy roared. Her lawsuits changed conversations about power and abuse in Hollywood. She showed other women that silence wasn't the only option. Despite decades of work, she was left out of the Oscars in memoriam segment. But journalists, fans, and historians have worked to preserve her voice and her truth. Her memoir, The Good, the Bad, and the Very Ugly, remains a rare, raw look at life inside the gilded cage of fame. Sondra Locke wasn't erased. She was remembered on her own terms. Not by the roles she played, but by the silence she shattered.
Their stories lit up our youth, and even now they still do. Let's celebrate them together. Like, share, and subscribe for more beautiful throwbacks.